There comes a time in every believer's life when silence grows louder than words, when patience becomes the very language of faith. You have been waiting, haven't you? Waiting for that sign, for that knock upon the door, that would confirm what your soul already knows. You have wondered if heaven had forgotten you, if the prayers you whispered through tears dissolved somewhere between earth and eternity. But what if the delay was never denial? What if every unanswered prayer was being prepared in secret, every waiting season measured with divine precision? My dear friend, it is not that God has turned his face away. It is that he has been arranging something far beyond what your present sight can behold. You see, the chosen ones are not those who merely ask, but those who endure the silence without surrendering their hope. They are the ones who keep walking when the road disappears beneath them. Their faith is not a loud declaration, but a quiet persistence. They remain still when every voice around them says to move. And perhaps that is what God is saying to you now. Stay put. Do not run. Do not chase. Do not seek to fix what is not broken. For those who are meant for you, those who are divinely appointed to find you, are already on their way. The winds of providence have been stirred, and the journey toward you has begun. You must understand something. Sacred destiny is not driven by speed, but by alignment. The people, opportunities, and blessings that carry your name are not lost. They have simply been walking the path designed for their awakening. And when their time intersects with yours, it will be as if heaven itself orchestrated the meeting. Because it did. The same hand that shaped galaxies has traced the lines that lead others to your door. You do not have to send for them. You do not have to beg the universe to notice you. The author has already written their arrival into your story. There is a divine stillness before great arrivals. Nature itself seems to pause before the dawn. The seed does not panic in the darkness of the soil, for it knows that growth requires burial before beauty. So it is with you. You are hidden not because you are forgotten, but because you are being formed. The silence around you is not emptiness, but preparation. Those who are meant to walk beside you are being refined just as you are. Learning, stumbling, growing, being shaped by the same unseen grace. You cannot rush their journey any more than you can rush your own. So stay put. Stay faithful where you are planted. The world will tempt you to move before the promise matures, to abandon the place God is preparing to bless. But every time you remain when your flesh wants to flee, you prove your trust in the one who governs the unseen. Waiting is not wasted when it is surrendered to the divine will. The chosen do not chase destiny, they attract it through obedience. Do not mistake motion for progress. Sometimes standing still is the most courageous act of faith. The river does not hurry to reach the sea. It flows because it trusts gravity to take it there. So too must your spirit learn to rest in the gravity of divine timing. The ones coming toward you are not wandering aimlessly. They are being drawn, not by coincidence, but by command. God has decided, and when he decides, every obstacle becomes a servant to his purpose. The delays, the detours, even the disappointments, all of them are instruments in the divine symphony playing in your favor. In the hidden chambers of heaven, threads are being woven, names whispered, hearts stirred, paths rearranged. You may not see it, but the unseen world is already in motion. The prayers you thought were unanswered are echoing still, bending time and space to fulfill their purpose. Every moment of confusion, every season of loneliness, has been preparing you for the convergence that is coming. Those who left were necessary for your becoming. Those who are on their way are necessary for your destiny. There is no accident in divine timing. When God decrees that something will reach you, no force in creation can keep it away. You will not need to strive for it, nor fight to hold it. It will come as naturally as morning follows night, quietly, faithfully, beautifully. So if you are weary from waiting, take heart. The silence is not a sign of abandonment, but the prelude to arrival. What is yours is already moving through time and circumstance, guided by the same voice that once said, "Let there be light." So stay where you are. Stay faithful. Stay open. They are making their way to you. The order has already been spoken in heaven. The journey has already begun. God has decided. Divine timing requires stillness, because stillness is not the absence of movement, but the presence of trust. It is the quiet surrender of a heart that no longer wrestles with time. A heart that has learned to rest in the rhythm of eternity. We live in a world that glorifies speed, where waiting is seen as weakness and movement as progress. Yet, in the kingdom of God, haste is often the enemy of purpose. The chosen ones understand that what is divine cannot be rushed. Every seed planted in faith must go through its own season of darkness before it can break through into light. The delay is not punishment, it is preparation. For what is born before its appointed time cannot endure the weight of its destiny. Stillness is where faith is forged. It is in the quiet, unseen moments when nothing seems to be happening that God is doing his deepest work. The soil of the soul must be broken before the roots of purpose can take hold. The restless spirit seeks results. The faithful spirit seeks relationship. To be still before God is to acknowledge that he is not a servant of our schedules, but the sovereign author of all time. He does not rush simply because we are impatient. He moves when all pieces of his divine design are aligned. When you wait in stillness, you declare to heaven that you trust his wisdom more than your own timing. You silence the noise of your fears long enough to hear the whisper of his will. The world will always try to convince you that motion equals progress. But not all movement is advancement. Some motion only circles the wilderness of uncertainty. Divine timing, on the other hand, is steady, deliberate, and precise. It is a sacred unfolding where each step, no matter how delayed, serves a purpose. The chosen learn that being still is not stagnation, it is alignment. It is the difference between running ahead of grace and walking hand in hand with it. To be still is to stand firm in the confidence that what is meant for you will never pass you by. The hands of time are not governed by chance, but by the will of the Creator, and when he ordains a season, no force on earth can either delay or hasten it beyond his decree. In stillness, you begin to see what cannot be seen in the storm of striving. You begin to discern that God is not only preparing the blessing for you, but also preparing you for the blessing. Sometimes the door remains closed because the heart is not yet strong enough to handle what lies beyond it. Sometimes the silence is not absence, but mercy in disguise. The Lord hides his work so that faith may have room to grow. He delays the visible so that the invisible can mature. To be still, therefore, is to participate in that hidden work, to allow grace to complete its quiet masterpiece within you. Stillness is not easy for those who have learned to measure life by motion. It feels unnatural to wait when everything inside urges you to act, to push, to make something happen. Yet the deeper truth is that impatience is often born of fear. The fear that perhaps God will forget, that perhaps the promise will fade away if we do not grasp for it. But divine timing silences that fear. It teaches the soul to breathe again, to find peace not in having control, but in surrendering it. Every second of stillness becomes a declaration. I trust you even when I do not understand you. There is a sacred rhythm woven into the fabric of creation. The tides do not rush to meet the shore, they follow the order of the moon. The sun does not fight for its moment, it rises when called. So too must the chosen ones learn to live by divine rhythm, not human impatience. When God says wait, it is not a rejection but a redirection. When He withholds movement, it is because He is aligning hearts, circumstances, and timing so that the outcome will not merely happen but be holy. Stillness is faith's posture, not passive, but powerful. It is standing ready, listening, trusting, believing that the same God who began the work will finish it at the appointed time. When you learn to honor divine timing, you stop comparing your journey with another's. You realize that every soul has its appointed season, and rushing yours will not quicken grace. You cease striving and begin abiding. You stop demanding signs and start discerning whispers. In stillness, you are taught the language of heaven, patience, trust, and surrender. These are the virtues that prepare the chosen for destiny. For when the appointed time arrives, those who have waited faithfully will not merely receive what was promised, they will have become the kind of person capable of carrying it. And so, divine timing requires stillness, because only in stillness can the human heart learn to rest in divine order. Only in stillness can faith mature into certainty. Only in stillness can we see that delay is not distance, that silence is not absence, that waiting is not wasting but worship in its purest form. Destiny finds the faithful, because faith is the language of heaven, and those who speak it draw divine favor without striving. Faithfulness is not a single act, it is a posture of the soul, a quiet and steady trust that God's promises do not depend on visible progress. The faithful do not chase what they believe is theirs, they stand still and watch as it finds its way to them. The universe, under the command of its creator, bends toward those who remain steadfast in belief when sight fails them. Destiny does not rush toward the restless, but gravitates toward those who are anchored in purpose, rooted in patience, and unwavering in trust. Faithfulness is not glamorous. It rarely looks like victory, often it feels like endurance. It is waking up each day and choosing to believe even when the evidence seems to argue against you. It is tending to what is in your hands while trusting God with what is beyond your reach. It is remaining loyal to the vision when it seems forgotten by everyone else. The faithful do not measure time by delay, but by development. They understand that the promise must ripen before it can be harvested. To remain faithful is to hold steady in the unseen, knowing that destiny is never lost. Only maturing behind the curtain of divine timing, there is a mystery to how God works with those who remain faithful. When He finds a soul that refuses to quit, He begins to move everything around that person into alignment. Doors open not because of power, but because of consistency. Opportunities appear not because of striving, but because heaven honors endurance. Faithfulness attracts what effort cannot earn. It draws divine order into human chaos. When others scatter, the faithful stay. When others despair, the faithful hope. And it is in that quiet steadfastness that destiny begins to draw near. You must understand that destiny is not found through pursuit. It is revealed through persistence. It finds those who stay rooted in their assignment, even when no one applauds. The chosen are not those who race ahead, but those who remain where they are planted until God says move. Every act of obedience, every moment of integrity, every prayer whispered in darkness becomes a signal to heaven that you can be trusted with greater things. God entrusts destiny only to those who have proven faithful with delay. For if you cannot endure the silence, you cannot handle the sound of fulfillment. The faithful understand that waiting is not wasted time, it is sacred training. The unseen seasons forge character, endurance, and humility, the very materials from which destiny is built. To rush ahead of the appointed time is to arrive unprepared. But when you remain faithful through the unseen, you are being refined to carry the unseen glory that comes with arrival. The waiting shapes you into the vessel that can hold what God intends to pour. Destiny is not fragile, it is deliberate. It is drawn to those whose hearts do not waver when the promise tarries. Faithfulness is the evidence of trust, and trust is the soil in which divine purpose takes root. The faithful do not panic when doors remain shut. They praise while waiting for the right key. They understand that what belongs to them is not locked away. It is being prepared. The very act of remaining loyal to God's timing becomes the magnet by which destiny locates them. They do not run after blessings, they walk in obedience, and the blessings run after them. This is the paradox of divine law. To those who chase, things flee. To those who trust, things arrive. The world teaches that success belongs to the ambitious, but heaven teaches that fulfillment belongs to the faithful. Ambition exhausts itself chasing shadows. Faithfulness quietly builds foundations. Those who move with the world's speed often miss heaven's rhythm, yet those who stay in rhythm with God's pace never miss what is meant for them. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment becomes an instrument of refinement. Faithfulness turns trials into training and losses into lessons. The faithful do not crumble under pressure, they are strengthened by it. Destiny is never drawn to noise. It is drawn to stillness wrapped in faith. It finds those who do not demand recognition, but continue to labor in secret. The faithful are unseen for a time, because their roots are growing deep, anchoring them against future storms. When their season comes, they do not need to announce it. Their fruit speaks for them. Faithfulness does not seek attention, and that is precisely why destiny trusts it. The unseen obedience of today becomes the visible elevation of tomorrow. When God sets out to fulfill a destiny, He looks not for the most gifted, but for the most consistent. The faithful are those who remain unmoved by the silence of heaven, those who keep building, even when the blueprint is unclear. Destiny cannot resist such souls. It finds them in the hidden corners of surrender, in the quiet persistence of their devotion. For in a world that runs, the one who remains becomes a lighthouse. And to such a light, destiny cannot help but draw near. Preparation happens in hiddenness, because what is unseen is often what is most sacred. The greatest works of God begin in silence, beneath the surface, far from the gaze of the world. The seed that breaks through the soil first dies in darkness. The sculptor carves in solitude before the masterpiece is unveiled. So too does God prepare His chosen ones away from the noise, in seasons where no one is watching, when applause has faded and recognition seems forgotten. Hiddenness is not punishment, it is protection. It is the womb of transformation, the secret place where strength, humility, and faith are forged without distraction or pride. In hiddenness, the soul learns dependence. When no one sees your effort, no one praises your endurance, and no one validates your worth, you begin to discover who you are apart from approval. You come face to face with the truth that your value is not defined by visibility, but by the one who called you. It is in these unseen seasons that God dismantles every counterfeit identity built upon comparison and applause. He strips away what is false, so that only what is eternal may remain. The hidden season is uncomfortable, because it silences the external voices we once relied on. Yet that silence becomes sacred, for it teaches the heart to hear only the voice of God. Hiddenness is where vision matures. The promise you carry cannot be born prematurely. Like a child in the womb, it requires time, nourishment, and stillness to grow. The world demands instant results, but heaven deals in perfect timing. When you are hidden, it is because the promise within you is still forming. God shields you from exposure, because exposure without preparation leads to collapse. The foundation must be strong enough to bear the weight of the future. Hiddenness ensures that when the door finally opens, you will not only walk through it, but remain standing on the other side. It is easy to crave visibility, to long for recognition, to desire validation that the waiting is not in vain. But what if the waiting is the very validation of God's care? He hides what he values most. Diamonds are not found glittering on the surface. They are buried deep beneath pressure and darkness. Gold is purified in fire before it shines. The chosen ones are refined in the same way. The season of hiddenness teaches resilience. It teaches the discipline of silence and the strength of endurance. Those who embrace it are being equipped not just to receive the promise, but to sustain it. Hiddenness reveals the motives of the heart. When no one is watching, when the applause has ceased, and the rewards are unseen, what remains is truth. Do you serve because it is seen, or because it is sacred? Do you worship for recognition, or because he is worthy? Hiddenness purifies devotion until it is no longer conditional. It breaks the addiction to validation and teaches the soul to find contentment in obedience alone. The one who can be faithful in secret is the one heaven can trust in the open. Every moment in obscurity has meaning. The tasks that feel small, the seasons that seem still, the prayers whispered into silence, all are threads in the tapestry of preparation. God wastes nothing. The lessons learned in solitude become the wisdom needed in visibility. The humility formed in hiddenness becomes the anchor in promotion. Without these unseen seasons, the chosen would crumble under the weight of destiny. Preparation in hiddenness builds unseen strength. The kind of strength that does not depend on circumstance, but flows from conviction. The world cannot understand why the chosen are hidden, because the world measures success by exposure, but heaven measures it by endurance. God hides you because he is preparing something in you that cannot be rushed. The longer you remain unseen, the deeper your roots grow. And when the time comes, your fruit will not only be visible, but unshakable. Hiddenness is heaven's classroom, where you learn patience, discipline, and trust. Where character is shaped to match calling. Every moment you feel overlooked is an invitation to grow unseen, to let God write chapters of your story that no one will read until the appointed season. Preparation in hiddenness also tests faith. It asks whether you can still believe when there is nothing to see. It trains your eyes to recognize progress in silence. God often delays visibility so that your faith may learn to function without evidence. You learn to trust the process even when it seems motionless, to believe that what is buried is not lost, but becoming. The hidden season builds quiet confidence, the kind that no platform can give and no storm can take away. And so, hiddenness is where purpose is purified, faith is strengthened, and destiny is prepared in silence. It is the unseen work that makes the seen possible. The secret shaping that ensures what will emerge carries both depth and divine durability. Those who endure the hidden season are not forgotten. They are being refined, readied, and quietly positioned for the moment when what was formed in secret will one day be revealed for the glory of the one who ordained it. Obedience attracts providence, because every act of surrender releases a divine current. that rearranges circumstances in your favor. Obedience is not merely compliance. It is an expression of trust, so deep that it no longer demands understanding. It is walking forward, even when the path is unclear, believing that the one who calls you has already gone before you. Providence does not flow toward rebellion or hesitation, but toward those whose hearts are aligned with divine instruction. When you obey without resistance, heaven begins to move resources, people, and moments into alignment with your purpose. What effort could not achieve, obedience accomplishes with quiet grace. True obedience is not born in convenience, but in conviction. It often requires you to act against logic, to step out when the outcome cannot be calculated. It is not about feeling ready, but about being willing. Each step of obedience is a declaration of faith, a silent confession that you trust God more than your own understanding. The faithful obey, even when the command feels impossible, because they know obedience is not about comfort, but about calling. And when the chosen obey, providence unfolds like a river finding its course. Unstoppable, inevitable, divinely directed. Obedience does not seek to manipulate results. It simply responds to instruction. When Abraham left his homeland without knowing where he was going, he stepped into a story written by unseen hands. When Noah built the ark under a clear sky, he acted on a word no one else believed. Their obedience became the bridge between the invisible promise and the visible miracle. In the same way, when you obey what God whispers, even when it contradicts reason, you set into motion unseen forces working in your favor. The doors that seemed closed begin to open, not by persuasion but by providence. The world glorifies independence, but heaven honors submission. Obedience is not weakness. It is alignment with divine order. It is the recognition that your life is not your own, and that the one who designed it knows where it should go. Those who live in obedience do not chase blessings. Blessings find them, because providence always follows alignment. When your will bends toward the will of God, the very fabric of reality bends with it. Creation responds to the voice of obedience, for it echoes the same surrender that called the universe into being. There is a quiet power in doing exactly what you are told, even when it costs you. Every act of obedience refines your heart, sharpens your discernment, and strengthens your connection with the divine. You begin to recognize that obedience is not about following rules, but about cultivating relationship. It is listening, trusting, and responding without delay. The faithful do not wait for clarity before they act, and clarity follows. They understand that God's instructions often come wrapped in uncertainty, but within that uncertainty lies the key to destiny. Obedience often looks insignificant to others. It can be as simple as staying when you want to leave, speaking when you'd rather be silent, or forgiving when the world tells you to fight back. Yet these small acts carry immense spiritual weight. They open pathways unseen to the human eye. Providence does not rush toward the loud or the proud, but toward the humble heart that quietly says, "Yes, Lord." Each time you yield your will, you invite divine orchestration to intervene on your behalf. Where rebellion brings resistance, obedience brings release. The path of obedience is rarely easy. It demands the death of pride and the surrender of control. But it is in that surrender that miracles begin. The moment you stop striving to make things happen and simply follow what you know is right, you free heaven to move without your interference. Providence thrives in surrendered spaces. What you were trying to force into place suddenly aligns with effortless grace, because the burden of outcome no longer belongs to you. The obedient are often misunderstood by the world because they walk to a rhythm others cannot hear. They move when commanded and rest when told. Their lives appear unpredictable, yet they are deeply guided. They do not need to know every step, because they know who leads them, and that trust becomes the magnet for providence. The assurance that every act of obedience will summon divine response in its own perfect timing. There are moments when obedience feels like loss, when following God seems to take you away from what you love. But those moments are only the pruning of purpose. The branch must be trimmed to bear fruit. The faithful understand that letting go in obedience never leads to emptiness. It makes room for providence to pour abundance. What you sacrifice in obedience returns, multiplied in ways you could never plan. So it is not effort but obedience that attracts the miraculous. It is not striving, but surrender that draws heaven near. Providence does not follow talent, wealth, or status. It follows obedience. When a heart is fully yielded, the universe bends to accommodate its journey. What seems like coincidence becomes divine timing. What appears accidental becomes intentional. Each yes, whispered in faith, sends ripples through eternity, inviting divine order to manifest in the visible world. Those who obey walk beneath an unseen covering, guided not by sight but by trust, and wherever they go, providence follows like a shadow cast by the light of surrender. Heaven has already decreed it, and when heaven speaks, creation listens. The word once spoken from the throne does not return empty. It carries power, purpose, and precision. What God decides is not a suggestion to time, it is a command to destiny. Every element of existence bends itself to fulfill what has been declared. When heaven decrees something over your life, no resistance on earth can overturn it. The storms may rise, the delays may stretch long, but the decree stands firm because divine will is not subject to human interference. The chosen learn to rest not in evidence, but in assurance. The quiet confidence that what has been spoken in eternity will find its manifestation in time. There are moments when it seems as though nothing is moving, when every prayer feels unanswered and every door remains closed. But what you must remember is that the decree was not made in your moment of waiting. It was written long before your first breath. Your path is not being invented as you walk it. It is being revealed. The confusion you feel is not chaos, it is coordination. Heaven has already arranged every encounter, every delay, every breakthrough according to a pattern that only eternity can see. The decree of God is not altered by your season, it governs it. When heaven decrees, the natural order bows. The waters part, the walls fall, the barren give birth, and the forgotten are remembered. The decree is not limited by logic or circumstance. It does not ask permission to manifest. It moves through impossibility as though it were air. What God has said about you exists beyond opinion, beyond doubt, beyond resistance. You may not yet see the full picture, but the pieces are already in motion. The decree ensures that even what was meant to destroy you becomes an instrument of destiny. Every setback becomes a servant to the spoken word. The human heart often wrestles with waiting because it cannot see how divine promises are kept through ordinary moments. Yet heaven's decrees are not rushed, they unfold like the seasons. Each in its appointed time. The flower does not question why it blooms in spring and not in winter. It trusts the rhythm of creation. In the same way, you must learn to trust that God's decree carries its own timing, and that nothing can make it arrive before or after its appointed moment. The decree has its own heartbeat, its own divine schedule. It will not fail. When heaven has decided, even your enemies become unwilling participants in the fulfillment of your purpose. The betrayals, the losses, the disappointments. All of them weave themselves into the fabric of your story, because the decree demands it. What was meant to harm you becomes the very means by which the prophecy is fulfilled. The divine decree does not remove adversity, it redefines it. It transforms obstacles into stepping stones and delays into directions. When you understand that heaven has already decided, fear loses its grip. You stop pleading for things that are already promised and start preparing for what is inevitable. Every word from God is alive, carrying the authority of its author. It cannot fade, cannot be erased, cannot be undone. Heaven does not revise its declarations. When God speaks, reality reorganizes itself to comply. Time, people, and circumstance become tools in His hand. You do not have to force what has already been fixed. Your task is not to make the decree happen, but to align yourself with it. Faith is not striving, it is standing. It is living as though the word has already manifested because, in the realm of heaven, it already has. There is a divine certainty that rests on those who understand that their story was settled before it began. They walk differently, not because they know every detail, but because they know the decision has already been made. The decree is their assurance through silence, their peace in delay, their anchor in uncertainty. When heaven has spoken, your yes becomes agreement, not initiation. You are not convincing God to act, you are stepping into what He already established. Even when life seems to contradict the promise, the decree remains true. The night cannot cancel the morning, it can only precede it. In the same way, what looks like opposition is only the final movement before fulfillment. Heaven does not panic at human delay. The decree accounts for every detour, every failure, every fall. It has been written with mercy, sealed with grace, and guarded by divine sovereignty. What God has decided will find you no matter where you stand. Heaven's decree carries a fragrance of inevitability. It may move slowly to your eyes, but it moves surely to its destination. Every waiting moment is simply the unfolding of divine order. You may feel hidden, but you are not forgotten. You may feel delayed, but you are not denied. The decree has already gone forth, and creation itself bears witness to its truth. Angels move at its sound, time bends to its purpose, and every promise hurries toward completion. The faithful do not fear what lies ahead, because they know the end has already been spoken. What heaven decrees cannot be undone, cannot be opposed, cannot be altered by any power beneath it. What was written for you will find you, because God has decided.